Alright, what little girls are made of. This is the infamous episode with the naked Kirk getting duplicated to make an android scene. And also one of the more interesting kissing scenes in the original series. Anyways, so what happens? The Enterprise comes to the planet Exo III to investigate a lost expedition of a Roger Corby, who was here to do archaeological research into figuring out what the ancient civilization on Exo 3 had been doing. Yeah, then we find out that there's androids and blah blah blah. So, how does that go horribly wrong? Okay, so this actually goes wrong really fast. So, okay, let's look at the history first. So, Exo 3 is a planet that used to be a Class M planet. Whether it's currently a Class M planet or not is never explained. It was said to be an Earth-like planet with a humans-like race living on it, though we never actually see what one of them looks like. The planet, however, in its current state, the entire surface is glaciated. The equator is about as cold as Antarctica is on Earth. And, just a, unlivable place. So, the Old One civilization. Now, this civilization is a highly technologically advanced civilization, and like many civilizations in Star Trek, they never left their homeworld, apparently. Although, I'll get back to this later, because the fact that this is one of those episodes that has an unreliable narrator trope, and because of this, half of the backstory is questionable at best. So, yeah. Anyways, the crowning jewel of their technology was the Android Duplicator. It's also the technology that led to the destruction of their civilization, apparently. So, the idea behind the Android Duplicator is that you can take a living person and make a copy. Well, yes and no. See, the original version of the androids that the old ones created didn't actually have a proper personality. They were little more than automatons. They looked like people, but they didn't really have minds. And, over the millennia, the old ones refined their android technology and got it to the point where the androids could actually think like, well, simulations of people. They didn't really think the way people do. And that is an interesting quirk of this episode and something that is a through line. And I'll get back to that later because, oh boy. So, in the episode, we have several people who are dead, honestly. Roger Corby was the archaeologist guy who went to the planet. He had a colleague by the name of Brown. The way the expedition is described makes it sound like there was more than just two people in the group. However, these are the only two that we ever see mentioned by name. They are presumably the two most important people, I guess, with Corby being the lead archaeologist, and I guess Brown being like his second in command or whatever. But they get duplicated, and one of the things that is noted by Christine Chappell, who, in a weird plot convenient twist, Christine Chappell actually personally knew the original Roger Corby quite well, And at one point, she was actually considering marrying him. Except she hasn't seen him for several years. And as it turns out, he actually died. But anyways, yeah, the Android version of Roger Corby, while in many ways he does act like Roger Corby, it's more like a simulation of Roger Corby than the real thing. He doesn't react to things the way that the real Roger Corby did. And this is actually something that Christine Chappell points out, is that his way of thinking is not, you know, the same as the original. And that gets brought up in the episode as the key flaw. Because this is apparently the reason why the androids created by the old ones rebelled, is that they didn't think the way that living people think. And the androids apparently at some point just decided they wanted to rule the world. And that, being turned off by the old ones was unacceptable. So they decided to kill the old ones to prevent themselves from getting turned off. And yeah, one thing that's interesting and gives credence to that line of thought is the fact that the Android version of Brown acts as Ruck's henchman. See, the Android version of Brown knows that Ruck kills Matthews and Rayburn, and not only does nothing about it, but he actually kind of helps Ruck with deceiving Kirk as part of that. He obviously ends up getting shot and killed, but, like I said before, all of the androids end up dying in this, so hey. Anyways. But that's actually one thing that's interesting, though, is that the Android version of Brown was apparently created after the original was already dead. So it's not clear if the Android version of Brown actually has a proper copy of Brown's personality, or if it's just something that's vaguely similar. Because while we have Christine Chappell to vouch for the differences between the copy of Corby and the original, no one in the thing has the ability to do so with Brown. So it's entirely possible that Brown's personality is just something Ruck programmed him to have. We don't know. So, speaking of Ruck, things about Ruck that we do know. One, Ruck is actually a lot bigger than a human. The Android Duplicator is seemingly incapable of creating an android as large as Ruck. Yeah, that raises a lot of questions about where Ruck came from. And Ruck is also an android who is so old that when asked how old he is, he basically just tells people that he doesn't really know how to properly communicate it to them, just, really, really old. Because, well, I guess you could say that it would have to be like Exo III years, and I don't think Ruck pays attention to what year it is on Exo III. Presumably, the Exo III computers have some kind of a chronometer, but I don't know that Ruck even cares. Ruck is a very strange character. So Ruck is apparently inherently malevolent. Ruck is apparently part of the faction of the Exo III androids that killed off the old ones, who were the living humanoid inhabitants of the planet. Ruck's stated goal is to create a new race of androids to replace humans. And he apparently wants to kill off the entire living sentient population of the Federation and replace them with androids. Yeah, that's the entire reason why we have a copy of Kirk. Oh yeah, I didn't open that page earlier. Anyway, yeah. The Android duplicate of Kirk gets disintegrated, obviously, but that is something that comes up, is that they try to make a copy of Kirk that will fool the crew of the Enterprise into thinking that James T. Kirk is actually doing things, but yeah, due to the way that the androids behave, being an imperfect copy of the original, it doesn't work. And you know, that's actually one of those things that's also interesting, is that Kirk apparently somehow tricks the Android duplicator into messing up the personality of the android. Anyway, though, another thing that's interesting about this is that we don't actually know who Andrea is. Yeah, one of the androids that was created before Kirk gets to the planet. However, at no point in the episode do they actually explain who Andrea is supposed to look like. However, one thing is readily apparent. Her personality is even less complete than Brown's. Meeting Kirk, having Kirk kiss her, apparently causes her to develop romantic feelings for Corby. Yeah, she doesn't really have romantic feelings for Kirk, but she starts thinking about romance after Kirk kisses her, and then she tells Corby she wants to be romantically related to him. And Corby's like, what? Because of yeah, this is also one of those things that's very strange, just because like it's not like the like stereotypical fatal error sort of glitch in computer programming. It's just that things kind of sort of go in the wrong direction, and her programming does something that Corby doesn't expect it to. Well, the android Corby anyways. Well, the android Corby doesn't know as much about the programming as Ruck does. Thing is, he kills Ruck. So, and after he kills Ruck, then we have no one who actually counts as a subject matter expert. Now, one thing that's interesting about all of this is that the Android Duplicator does apparently get taken to the Daystrom Institute because they were trying to understand how the technology works. In many ways, it's an incomplete technology. However, it's certainly a useful one. At the very least, the physical duplication aspect of it is quite good. Now, one thing about this that is probably something that you would need to, refine is the whole programming aspect of it, because as I mentioned before, Ruck was evil. Whatever Ruck is wasn't apparently created by the Android Duplicator, which is something that is not explained ever. It is actually said at some point that Ruck is a more advanced kind of android than what is able to be created by the duplicator. No, they do not explain how that works. Although, as I mentioned, this is a very large planet. And one of the things that you could have players do is trying to figure out secrets like that. Because, like, having a research team from, say, the Daystrom Institute come to the planet trying to locate salvageable technology is absolutely a plot device you could do to use this location. It doesn't matter what era of Star Trek you're playing in, as long as it's something set after Kirk was here. TNG, DS9, Voyager era, whatever. Pick one, it doesn't matter. Because of the fact that the technology that was used is something, interesting. And also, there's a whole lot of things we don't know about the place. Like, are we actually certain that all of the old ones are dead? No, we aren't. Ruck claims that all the old ones are dead, but we know that Ruck is an evil liar. So whether or not it's actually true that all of the old ones are dead is something that we cannot verify. And having players scour the planet trying to ascertain whether or not the old ones are dead, or at the very least, find a DNA sample of the remains of an old one, you know what? Yeah, that is absolutely something players could have fun with. And also maybe you could have players get menaced by Android duplicates. Yeah, that's another thing, is that a lot of the aspects of the Android Duplicator seem to be automated system routines. It's not explained exactly what Andrea and Ruck are doing at that control console, but most of it is basically just turning the machine on. So having an automated system make a copy of one of your away team, and having that away team fulfill programming that is analogous to what Ruck had running through his evil mind. Oh, that would be doable. Whether or not, players enjoy it, hey, there's stuff you could do. Also, another thing that comes up in the episode is that these androids aren't actually inherently evil. Yeah, Ruck is evil. The Roger Corby android isn't. The Andrea android has a partially finished mind, but sure, what little mind she does have isn't seemingly evil either. The Brown android is evil, though. And Ruck is, as I've said several times, evil. But not all of the androids are. And the androids were apparently created to be good. It's just that they decided they wanted to kill off the old ones to prevent the old ones from deactivating them. Which, again, it kind of goes with the whole Terminator thing. Ah, well. Also, these androids are not as strong as Terminators. Yeah, that's something important to remember. Alrighty, see you guys later.